All right, so here today we have my good buddy here, Davide Bianca. He was actually a very, very pivotal guy when I first joined the medical device landscape and helping me essentially stay sane through the whole entire process. He is a manager for Florida for external bone growth stimulators. So I wanted to get him on, kind of share some key insights that he would have because I think he has a tremendous amount of experience that anybody that watches this or listens to would find beneficial in the medical device sales space. So, if you want to just say a few words about yourself here, Dave, first before we start getting into the interview, by all means.
Yeah, hi. How you doing, guys? I'm Davide Bianca. I am 41 years old. I currently live down in sunny Miami. I'm originally from the Northeast. I'm from Philadelphia, and my wife is from New Jersey, and have been down here 4 years, serving as the area sales manager for our company down here. I primarily focus with external bone growth simulators. And it's been a fun ride. It's been a lot of curveballs, a lot of learning curves, but definitely it's been a interesting fun ride thus far.
So David, how did you get into medical sales? So, like, how is your story from the beginning to now?
Yeah, so my story is actually really interesting and perhaps maybe even inspiring for people who, maybe are currently in one career and maybe one day eventually like seeking to get into the medical device world. So I actually for 13 years had my own wellness center. I was a personal trainer and a massage therapist, and I, majored in nutrition and dietetics in college. And when I graduated college, I went and got my massage therapy certification as well as my personal training certification. And, in my early 20s and in my grinding years, I took that opportunity and kind of built my business. And, fast forward 13 years of it. And, the end game for me was, I had a 2,500 square foot facility in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia. And it was a great gig. It was a great lifestyle. It was an amazing experience being an entrepreneur for so many years and so young. But I always had this itch and this inclination to get into sales. I had known a lot of people who were in, pharma sales, med device sales, and I was just in utter awe of, their lives. And so I always had this itch of wanting to get in med device sales. And, they tell you it's not necessarily the education you have, but a lot of times it's who you know. And I just happened to know the right person. And this person is now my boss. He's also your boss, and he gave me the once in a lifetime opportunity to, dive right into med device sales, specifically external bone growth stimulator sales. And I knew it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, given that I had no sales experience. So at the ripe old age of 37 years old, I decided to take the job and relocate and just go for it because, I'm not somebody who ever wants to look back and say, what if? I figured it was worth the opportunity. And so far it's definitely been worth it.
Good man. Well, did you ever think of a career in medical sales prior to, I guess, owning your own company and then looking out for opportunities that way? So, I mean, I guess a good way to word this question would be, growing up through college, anything like that, like college years, were you thinking about medical device sales at all?
No, when I was in college, I wasn't really focused on, having a career. I had waited tables all through college and, I was making a lot of money really, really, really young. I was in my early 20s and I was making, sometimes well over $1,000 a week. And, listen, back in the early 2000s, $1,000 a week cash was a lot of money. So, it never came across my mind thinking what it would be like to not only be in medical device sales or pharmaceutical sales, or even just in general, any kind of like sales profession. All I used to focus on when I was younger was just making money. But to answer your question, no, it never really popped in my head what it would be like to be in either medical device sales or some kind of sales professional.
So, what would you say is your main reason for wanting to take this leap? Was it more the lifestyle that you saw other people having? Was it more of, the money that you knew that you could generate if had enough time in the space?
You know, Lifestyle never really appeals to me because I believe you can create your own lifestyle. Everybody has different ways of living. Everybody has different, income goals. So for me, Matt, it wasn't ever really a lifestyle appeal. It was more opportunity. And, for me, I was at a place in my life where, um, I don't want to say my business was limited, but I was the face of my business. And so I felt like my growth opportunities were somewhat limited because it all came down to the amount of hours and clients and hours I put in, right? So I think what was most appealing about getting into med device sales was honestly the opportunity and the ability to grow within a sales profession and ultimately have a professional job. Because in my head, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to do my best to make it work out. But if it doesn't, I'm gaining such valuable experience in a very coveted industry that could more than likely catapult me to another industry, say, if I wanted to go into pharma sales or software sales. I think when you have med device sales, especially a successful track record of med device sales on your resume, I think it could really lead you to a lot of other, professional opportunities if you're seeking them.
100%. Now, do you think med device sales is a good career for younger folks today? So, for example, for people graduating college, do you think it is still a good, viable career option? Because I know that there's issues like price erosion, other kinds of things nowadays, competition. Do you still view it as one of the cream of the crop jobs?
Without a doubt, I absolutely do. I mean, if I could do it all over again, I would have, dove headfirst into this job when I was 22, 23 years old, because I think, when you're younger and, you're not settled down yet in life and, you don't have pets and homes and kids and a family, you're able to just be out there so much more in this job. And this job, as you know, it's a lot about networking and it's a lot about connecting, and quite honestly it's all about building relationships. And you have so much more of that time to be able to do those things at a younger age. So I think for somebody who's 22, 23, fresh out of college, it could be an incredibly challenging job, especially at first, and quite possibly even an incredibly challenging job to be successful at. But having the ability to do it while you're young, if you can put in that time and grind, somebody like you, your age, is a perfect example of just what, the outcome could become 2, 3 years down the road. And then you start to think of yourself, okay, what is it going to be like for me in my 30s? And then what is it going to be like for me in my 40s? And so I think that time is, it's so valuable in this space because, you and I talk about it all the time. Time in the game is your biggest asset.
Yeah, it's really the same thing. It's almost kind of like investing because, you usually start off with something very small, with most sales jobs, unless you're taking over for a big territory. But generally speaking, I mean, if you're fresh out of school or something, they're not going to let you take over for a big territory anyway with a lot of business with no experience. So generally you're starting fresh. So it really is like an investment that can just catapult to something over time, which could be,
Absolutely.
that really like a snowball into something really good. But so what would you say is the thing that you like the least about medical device sales? So if you could change one thing specifically, what would it be?
I think the thing that I personally like the least is the windshield time. it is a lot of windshield time now. You know, for some people, the windshield time doesn't affect them as much. I know for a lot of people, they enjoy it. They love the peace and quiet of getting in their car, or they love the ability to listen to a podcast. And don't get me wrong, I love myself a good podcast. I love learning. I love you know I actually really enjoy driving. I've always had a passion for driving, but the windshield time, especially geography specific. I know. I have a very sprawled out geography. South Florida, it may not sound like much, but you're talking hundreds and hundreds of really thousands of square miles. And, nothing is just a quick little drive away, right? So for me personally, the thing I dislike the most, without a doubt, is the windshield time. That's truthfully really the only thing I dislike about it. But if I were in Philadelphia, my hometown, and I was living in my Center City condo and all of my accounts were within Center City, I most likely wouldn't even be driving. So I wouldn't have that disdain that I have for the windshield time that I have now. So I think for me personally, it's the windshield time, but I think for somebody else, their experience could be different.
Yeah, I think it's 100% true. I mean, when I was doing these in Pennsylvania, it'd be like an hour and a half to each accounts, but it was just nice highway driving the whole time. In Atlanta, it's like an hour and a half to go 15 miles because
Yeah,
it's
of
just
bumper and
it's
bumper.
filled with bumper to bumper traffic the
Yep.
entire time. So it's kind of just like take your pick which way you want to go. Um, okay, so the product that we sell specifically, I wanted to talk about a little bit because the people that are going to be breaking into this, so to speak, are probably going to want to see some differences between hardware slash what we sell. So, what would you say is the biggest pros for what we sell and the biggest cons as far as how hard it is to sell versus maybe some other things like hardware?
Yeah, I think the pros ultimately about our product are, we really have such a really strong ability because we are working full throttle with the office, with different members of the staff, the physician, the PAs, the NPs, the surgery schedulers, the office managers. We really have such a strong ability to build such a foundational relationship with everyone within our offices. So I do think that that's an advantage because, just knowing a little bit about, the other side of things, the spinal hardware side of things, and you may agree to this based on your experience, is, you don't spend as much time in the office. So your relationships are with the doctor or with the people who are in the operating room with you. Whereas, my relationships are with the people in the office. So I do feel that we have that advantage, and I do feel like that is something really good about being able to sell DME, so to speak. But then you piggyback that into one of the disadvantages I feel of is we don't always have the strongest relationship with the physician because in our line of work it is incredibly incredibly difficult to get more than just a couple of minutes of the physician's time because when we're meeting with him, it's typically during his clinic days. And, for those of you who are interested in getting in med device sales, let's just say that clinic days aren't always the easiest days to talk to physicians, um,
Yeah,
just because of the
and
time.
oh yeah, and I mean I can tell, doing things on the durable medical equipment side of things again versus hardware. I never went in and talked to a scheduler once when I was doing spine hardware. Like there was never a need because you're always with the surgeon all the time and
Yeah.
the surgeon just puts what he's going to put on it and you already know that you're signed up to do it because you talked to him. So like there was
Yeah.
almost no need to, unless there's like a trauma coming in or something, but other than that, like he would tell you his plan like ahead of time and you would have to be ready
Yeah.
for it. So I mean, yeah, I will tell you my whole time doing spinal hardware, I never walked into an office one time and pretty much the whole entire like almost year that I was
Yeah.
doing
And
it.
I've never once walked into the OR. As a matter of fact, a couple of months ago, one of my really good PA friends, she walked me down to like the stroke unit, and I got to see some of the operating rooms where they do like their smaller procedures, their one levels or their two level ACDFs. And it was a very overwhelming space for me. Everybody had on their hats and their masks and their scrubs, and there's all this equipment, and I don't know what a C arm is, an O arm. I don't know what any of that stuff is. So for me, it was incredibly overwhelming. So the office feels like home for me. I don't have that sense of anxiety that I get when I walk down to the OR. But again, it's because the majority of my time is spent in that office.
100%. And I mean, so transitioning now into something a little bit towards people trying to break in, what would be your top tips for people that are trying to break in that don't have sales experience?
Well, so I think top tips. Number one is network with the right people, right? Because you may not have that sales experience, but it is all about who you know. You may not have that sales experience, but you may know somebody who maybe is in med device sales, or maybe even pharmaceutical sales, who has a connection with a medical device sales company, and that person, that connection can get your foot in the door, right? So I think that that's a tip, and then really the other tip, honestly, is just you know showing up. I think regardless of what job you're in, if you want to get in med device sales, I think that you can ultimately be successful in it if you just show up.
100%. I think that all the time. People just don't go into offices all the time. They're scared. They don't want to like talk to that big surgeon because they already think it's going to be a no from, 100 yards away. So that kind of stuff happens all the time, like quite often. And now transitioning to once you get the first job, what would you say is your top skills that you look in for people to predict them to be well-rounded in the space?
So top skills that I would look for somebody.
Yep.
So I think number one, we just briefly touched on it. Just showing up, right? So that falls into my number one trait that I look into is your drive and your work ethic and your desire. They all fall under the same umbrella for me because you can be taught a product, you can learn the research, you can be taught how to do the process of it, but you cannot teach drive, motivation, and determination, right? And so for me, when I'm looking at traits that somebody absolutely has to have to be successful in med device sales, and not just in med device sales, but in really any kind of sales environment, right? Is that drive, determination, and motivation. Because just showing up, and I will, you and I talk about it all the time. I talk about it all the time when I have conversations with my other friends. I have a lot of conversations with our boss about it. Just showing up really, really is half the battle. And I don't think people realize that actually is the most difficult part about this job. It is just working hard day in and day out and just consistently showing up, because if you do that, you almost succeed by default, because you're separating yourself from just being every other rep. And then, that would fall under, one umbrella, even though it's essentially three different things, but it all falls under the same umbrella. And then the other thing, Matt, that I really, really, really think is important in order to be successful, not just in med device sales, but really any type of sales environment, but especially medical device sales, is you have to have that emotional intelligence and ability to, work through the webs. And what I mean by that, it's, you think it's going to be as easy as, hey, I'm going to walk into this account and I'm going to show them my brochure and I'm going to get in front of this doctor and he's going to start prescribing my product. And that's the farthest from the truth of how this job actually works, right? And so I think what makes a successful rep, and I believe it's also an uncoachable trait, is having that emotional intelligence to peel back the layers and to figure out, okay, I need to get connected to this person and I need to talk to that person. okay, so I'm going to ask them what's going on here, and I'm going to try to, join this networking event. And it's just about peeling back the layers and having that emotional intelligence that not a lot of people, ironically, have. Um, so I think that having that emotional intelligence, it really does go a long, long way in being successful in med device sales.
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing too. Because you got to be able to read the room when you should talk to people, when you shouldn't talk to people, because you might not get another chance again, really. So you don't want to blow it. Um,
Absolutely.
so this is actually the last question here, but how long would you give someone performance wise to be able to gauge if they're actually doing well in the space, just from your managerial perspective?
Another great question. We all blossom at different times, but I will say, I think within 24 months, really by month number 18, and I'll break it down in two parts. I think your first 12 months, you need to master your geography, master your product, and master the process and know everything about your territory. So I think those first 12 months, especially if you're new into med device sales, you're not a competitive hire and you don't know anybody and you don't have any relationships and you've never sold this product, I really think those first 12 months are all about learning everything about your geography, learning everything about your accounts, learning who's who in the zoo. Our boss loves to say, and who's who in the zoo, and knowing these people is huge and an integral part of being successful down the road. And then I think after excuse me, after 12 months of hopefully mastering the product and the process and the geography, you then should start to have some success. And I ultimately think between months number 18 and 24, you are already the person, the sales rep that you are going to be by the end of your second year. And if it hasn't clicked by the end of your second year, then I truly believe that this just isn't the job for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think, especially in what we do, I think that's 100% accurate. I think, because obviously each sales specialty is going to be different. If you're selling like MRI machines, it might take you like a year or something like that to even sell one of them. But then that's,
Yeah.
that could be, your year or two quota in one
Yeah.
MRI machine or something. But 100%, I feel like for majority of med sales thing, I mean, you got to be making sales every month. That's like what, it's all about. And yeah, I think that's a perfect time frame. So, that's pretty much, that is it. So I'm going to leave David's LinkedIn. I'll just, copy it and paste it if you guys want to reach out to him or anything like that. I'm sure he'd be, willing to respond to any, messages you might have to him on LinkedIn, if you had any questions for him. But other than that, I think that's pretty much going to be it. So thanks for the time.
Hey Matt, thanks, man. I appreciate the conversation, appreciate the questions, and hopefully I was able to provide some good insight for all you youngsters trying to get into med device sales.
Oh yeah, man, 100%.